biggest thing, trusting myself and really following that when you get an intuition, like an intuitive hit, if you like, when you kind of get a sense of like, I really want to do this feels like a good idea, follow that. And I think that trusting yourself and knowing that you have something of value is huge. The first sale is always to you. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't value your offer, if you don't completely and utterly love what you're offering to somebody, and you say, I can help you, I've got this 8-week program or this 12-month, whatever it might be. If you don't absolutely love it, they're going to sense it and they're going to be repelled. They won't know why, but energetically you are repelling them. So it's about trusting yourself, trusting in the value that you have, and then putting yourself out there with certainty and confidence, and that will draw the right people into you.
I often say one of the most formative things actually happened to me almost at the very outset of my career. I had finished a business studies degree, and I'd gone over to South Africa for a traineeship, and then I came back for a first job, and I was getting on grand working in financial services. The next thing is I get a phone call from these guys who say, would you like to work with a merchant bank? Oh, okay. I was flattered that they had found me and had asked me this question. And yes, they're looking for a marketing executive. So marketing executive. It almost sounded like I'd been appointed to a board of directors. So I went along and I listened to this, and I was told about how marvelous this was going to be. And I bought it, but in my gut, I just felt there's something here that's not quite right. And of course, you realize actually, as soon as you get your feet under the table, that your gut is almost always right, because I was supposed to be selling financial services to brokers who were supposed to provide loans so that people who were buying insurance from them could kind of do drip payments. So they 6 months, 9 months, whatever it happens to be. But the brokers, who I was told were going to love this product because it was going to be so wonderful for their client, they hated it. And actually, they told me so. They said, hey, if we do this, firstly, we're going to have less money going through our bank accounts, which is then going to make my bank manager say, hey, I'm not giving John, I'm not giving Mary any additional money for overdrafts and other things. So in other words, it instantly affected their street cred. And the second thing is you're disconnecting me from my client. And so for both those reasons, even though I was told, look, the product is this, it's like Mr. Ford, all the cars are black, go and sell black cars. I realized, and of course, in those days, you couldn't walk away from a job immediately. So I stuck with this for a year. And so I hated it. So I was reminded every day, trust your gut. When a story is unfolding in front of you, you are probably very, very well equipped to figure out whether this is going to work out well or not. And if you don't, sometimes you'll be sorry.
You were talking there, John, about setting up your business during COVID. I think what has happened is that this whole idea of we can't do something was sort of thrown out the window. If we were told this time last year, or shortly before this time last year, that you can't travel, that you can't go to pubs or restaurants, that you can't visit family in different parts of the country, we said, oh, that's ridiculous. That'll never happen. And it has happened. But additionally, if you were told, well, think about the way that your business can expand, or that you can do this, we might have said, I can't, or that can't happen, but it can. And that's a huge learning that I have taken from it. It really has allowed me the freedom to sort of say, look, give it a try. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. This is a good time for experimentation, I think, at the moment. But with regard to learning, it's that cliche, every day is a learning day. It's just all of the time. There's just so much to learn. It's a big learning curve.
But I think one of the keys here, John, is it starts with, well, what's our attitude to failure? And, when something doesn't work out, do we, and I guess many of us, including me at one stage, would have looked on it, well, gosh, technically I failed there. But, there's a gentleman called Colin O'Brien who wrote a book called Feeding Johnny. And it was a book about, kind of an autobiographical book about his life and his business. And there's a chapter in it. And when I read this book in 2015, I think it was, there was one chapter that really stood out for me. And the chapter was called Sometimes I Win and Sometimes I Learn. And he had that mindset that, you know, if something doesn't work out for whatever reason, well, maybe I can learn from this. So now if something doesn't go right for me, so if, even in COVID, you know, certainly none of us wanted COVID to arrive, but maybe, well, how can we come out of this even stronger than before? That if COVID is to leave a legacy, maybe we can be doing something at a higher level that we might never have done or seen or addressed if COVID hadn't arrived. So maybe it starts with that attitude that I'm going to go in here and I'm going to see what I can do differently or better. That maybe might leave a positive out of COVID. So I think for me, it starts with that. I remember I had a big failing in public speaking a number of years ago, John, where I was in front of a live audience. And it was the first time ever I didn't have notes in front of me. And I always have notes in front of me. And this day I said, right, I won't have notes for a particular reason. And I didn't have notes, but that was the day my mind froze. And I genuinely could not remember the next stage of my presentation. And the audience were very kind to me, I have to say, because I could do nothing but put my hand up and say, I'm really sorry, but I've completely lost my train of thought. And I had to kind of distract them while I was able to go and figure it out. Now, a friend of mine was in the audience and he rang me the next day. And he said, Jerry, I really felt sorry for you last night. And I said, thanks. I said, I've come to terms with it now. I said, I'm fine with it. I said, I'm in a really good frame of mind. And he said, that's great to hear. And then he offered me a bit of advice. He said, here's a tip. And he gave me a golden tip, John, that I never would have got if that hadn't happened. And he gave me a tip, and I've used this umpteen times since, where I've needed it. If anything ever goes wrong in a presentation, have an exercise. This is, I guess, for us as professional speakers, but have an exercise ready that distracts your audience, an exercise that could work in any environment where you go and you get them to do something for a minute or two. And while they're going off to do an activity that they maybe believed that was always in the plan anyway, you can go off and have a quiet moment or two to yourself and then recollect your thoughts. And then when you come back in, they won't have even noticed. And I've used that many, many times since, and it's been a golden legacy of something. So sometimes I win, and sometimes, thankfully, I learn.
Collaboration is it's just too big for the word. Collaboration is absolutely massive. When you see people collaborate, they can literally move mountains. So when you see people that bring out their own magnificence and they're realizing skills that had been hidden and they haven't used, and they bring those out, that's great. But when they collaborate with other people, you can just move mountains. And that's something that has never, ever left me. And I'm a very independent person. So collaboration for me was never the first choice. It's not that I'm not a kind person. It's just that I get on with doing stuff myself. So to have this huge lesson about the fact that when you put that magnificence with other people's magnificence, then you create something incredible, that was life-changing for me.
If you stand in front of an audience and you're looking to present to feel good yourself, if you're doing it for acceptance, you're going to get chewed up and spat out, as I was in the early days of my career. Because people see that insecurity and that ego. When I realized that people were using my goal setting process and achieving, I mean, other than my family, the thing I'm most proud of in my life, John, are the things people have used my goal setting process for and achieved just stunning results. And that drives me. So when I realized that people can really achieve big, I started making my delivery as a speaker all about service, trying to impact as many people as I can, free of the desire for a round of applause and a happy evaluation sheet afterwards. Because the truth is that some people will always not like us. That's life. And if we worry about that, we're not presenting to everybody, we're not serving, that's about us, ego. So I started presenting totally from about the room is having it, totally about service. And the results came. And that is the single biggest lesson I've learned. If I coach anybody now on presentations, all I say, first thing is that serving the room, or is this about your ego?
I think one of the ways to modify your communication style is to listen, and rather than speak. And so what you were explaining just then was a more conventional, traditional way of doing work. And back in the sort of 60s and 70s, there weren't many female leaders, hardly any at all. And there wasn't much in the way of management styles. And of course, in the ensuing 40, 50 years, we now have lots of management styles and levels, and more women in work, and hopefully more women coming up the ranks and having more leadership positions. But the first thing I would ask a baby boomer to do is to ask questions, to be curious and interested about younger people, and to listen to the answer. You know, that silly thing people say that you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. I know it's an awful cliche, but it is true. So it's about them, rather than them thinking, well, this is how it used to be when I was their age in the workplace. It's thinking about, what is it like now in the workplace? I'll give an example. 40 or 50 years ago, what we had was lots and lots of people in a workplace, whether it was a factory or a warehouse or an office. An institution or an organization had lots and lots of people, and the office had lots and lots of paper and lots of different people doing lots of different jobs. And if you fast forward a number of decades, what you've got is one individual who drives a number of offices, or one individual who drives a number of machines in a factory, or one individual who drives the entire warehouse because it's computer generated. So we have a flatter structure, we have fewer people, and it means that the world of work is no longer what it was like in our parents' and grandparents' time. So first thing is, ask them what they're interested in, ask them what they do, and listen to the answers. That would be the first thing I would say.
Well, I've started a business with somebody and I had to shut it down, and that was a hard lesson. I put about 3 years into a startup, and I was doing this as a side project. And I don't want to go into the details of it because I don't want to say too much about other people working in the business, but it was 3 of us got together to do it, and I was a minority shareholder, and I had another guy who was a minority shareholder, and there was a guy with a 51% shareholder. And I thought I could hold the thing together with my own tools, like having a clear vision and having clear strategy and a clear idea. And I was doing great. We were doing fantastically well. We got backers. We had people willing to invest in us and all kinds of things. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with certain types of people, and I knew this from the guys I put together, all it takes is one guy to get outside the boundaries and you have an unstable situation. And I knew enough to know that once we had got to a certain point, the only way to deal with this is to shut it down, to protect my business and to protect the other guy's business, and time and everything else, just shut it down. So I took that decision. We took that decision to shut down the business, the junior partner, myself and himself. And we actually steered the other guy into shutting it down. I said, all right, go back, wind it all back to the beginning, and off you go. You can go on your own track if you want, not with us. That was a tough lesson, tough process, but a very, very good lesson. I feel now I have my entrepreneur's badge. I've put my money at risk and I've learned my lessons. I've gone through a lot in terms of seed funding. I've gone through a lot in terms of team establishment, in terms of founders and what to look for. It was a great insider experience. So it was a really good investment in my education as a business coach who might work with startups. And I generally don't work with startups for the simple reason that they can't afford me. I work with more established businesses because they're in a position to pay somebody like me. But I needed to understand that space, and I was part of what drew me into it in the first place. But it was painful actually shutting down a business and saying, right, this isn't going to work. That's painful. And it makes me much better at empathizing with people and empathizing with the range of emotions that business owners have to go through. Because when you're an employee, the worst thing that can happen to you is you lose your job overnight or something like that. And that can be really difficult. I could empathize with people who find themselves in those situations from my experience in the corporate world. Like I was fired 4 times in Ericsson. It was a laugh now. Every time they fired me, they keep rehiring. But it was an interesting experience when your contracts come up. It was that type of an experience that technically you could call it a firing. In reality, it was something quite different. And every one of these nodal points is a reinvention, and every one of those reinventions is an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to be a better person, a better business person, and a better leader. And that particular pain is most recent, But I've had lots of those moments where you say, my God, what am I going to do? And you're lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're not sure what you're going to do. Those are growth opportunities now, looked back on from where I am now. They didn't feel like that at the time. But what I would pipe up and say is a fellow like me talking in your ear as a business coach or doing a 90-minute monthly session helps to turn those crises into growing sessions.
Going back to other businesses that I might have started would have been just head first into what I thought was a good idea, even back to my first business, which was a language school. Our location was wrong. So we didn't put enough research into where the market was. It was a case of what we wanted and where we wanted it, without considering the client or the customer. So yeah, I've made every mistake over the years. I think when it comes to being a speaker, or I do think a lot of us go into it because we find there's a subject that we're passionate about that we want to share. So in one sense, we can be bad at looking at the market because it's something we want to speak about. But again, with experience, you start to learn what exact, let's say, area within that subject is what people want and what people need. But yeah, in recent years, I would have, taken that more into consideration around what's the market looking for, rather than what do I just want to do with my business.
The wave of resilience is something you go through when something hard hits you, a change, redundancy, adversity, trauma. Initially you have shock. So if you imagine a wave starts from left to right, you start off with shock and you go, oh my goodness, fight or flight. And then you'll go into denial. The brain will try to protect you and say, oh, it's not really happened. Put your fingers in your ear. Now, once you get past that, you will have anger, and anger will bring you down, down, down. After anger, you have the sharing, blaming. Now, this might be good therapeutically, where you can just talk to people, do some art, poetry, but you also might shout at people, slam doors. You might put something on social media, not good. So you'll share one way or another. This will bring you down to rock bottom, which I've already mentioned. Now, after rock bottom, you've got acceptance. So you accept the situation, you accept what's happened to you, and after acceptance, you can start taking action, and then you rise up the other side and you get to your new vocation, your new place. Now, if you do this correctly, you will end up higher than where you started, meaning that adversity, trauma, change is actually a good thing. So if you do the wave of resilience correctly, you can come out of it in a better place, as long as you do every single thing. You can't skip any of them. You can't skip past anger or denial or sharing. You have to, because if you don't, at some point you will flip back. So for me, I was angry. I was angry that people say, oh, all in this together. What do I need to do? I need to share. I need to do something therapeutically. I need to do it. And art is a really good thing. I'm not an artist. I can draw. I've done poetry before when I was in hospital. So sometimes, in desperate measures, you try anything. So I put pen to paper or paintbrush to paper, and I started drawing this feeling that I had about we're all in the same storm, the pandemic. This is like a storm, and we're all in a big ocean, but I wouldn't say we're in the same situation because we're in different boats. So that's what I did. So I've got this here. So with the picture that I've got here, I've got the big black clouds of the pandemic and the lightning coming down and the rain, obviously loads of rain. And then you've got the sea, and it's a rough sea, and it's got different boats in it. So I'd say this is me here on my own. I run my own business. There's nobody helping me here. And I'm paddling furiously, trying to survive. Heading towards, there's always some positivity. The sun, there's a bit of sun here. So I'm paddling towards that. How about everybody else? Everybody's in different boats. So some people are in sailboats, and they have to change. They have to adjust their sails to get the wind. Some are small sailboats with a few people, some in bigger boats. Some people in rowing boats, and they've even lost an oar. They're really struggling. They're just going around in circles. Sadly, there's some people here drowning because their boat has already capsized. Some people are on ocean liners. They really haven't been affected, or even they're actually getting some benefit out of this pandemic situation one way or another. You could go on and on and on. You could do different boats. You could even do submarines that haven't even been affected by this pandemic. You could do lighthouses. You could do sharks in the water. There's all sorts of things. But for me, painting this, I suddenly realized which boat I was. And therefore, I shouldn't compare myself to other people in other boats. And this is what I talk about. I talk about, which boat are you in, and why do you think you're in that boat, and how do you feel about that, and what do you need to do to get your boat to the end of the storm, to the sunlight. And it just makes people think about it. But also in the workshops that I run, people hear those stories and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that they were in such a small boat. I didn't realize that they were bailing out the water. Here's me on my sailing boat. We've had to change a little bit here and there, but actually, we're doing okay. But everybody's different. So it's like I was saying, there's no such thing as normal. It's a similar thing to that. We're in the same storm, but in different boats.
I was in a plane. I was flying to India, to Mumbai for a keynote presentation I was doing in Mumbai, and that air hostess was just absolutely amazing. I mean, she had an eye on all of her passengers. The minute you arrived, you had that smile, you had that warmth, you had that eye contact. She walked around and I dropped something. And the next minute she was here. She'd already given me a towel. She'd already given me something that, so I could pick it up and I could change it. And those kind of things make that difference. It's not the big things, customers. Yes, they want you to meet their expectation. They want you to be here. They want you to be fast. They want you to be flexible. But making them feel valued, that's what customers want, don't they? They want those little things that are going to make them feel, wow, 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 wow. And I came out of the plane and I took a photo of her and I put her on my keynote presentation and I talk about her because she was just amazing, the way she made me feel, and I will go and fly again in that airline anytime I'm going back to Mumbai for another keynote presentation. I will fly with that company because I couldn't stop raving about her. She was so nice that, she represented the company. And that makes a difference. That's what employees do. They represent the company. They're inspiring. They want to be here. They love being here. And that's what you want, the employees to be like.
The biggest lesson I learned in my life is to enjoy every moment and believe that if something happens right now the way it happens, it's for you to learn from that. Whatever it is. You go through divorce, there's a lesson for you, right? You met together with that person, now you're going to divorce because you have to go separate ways. You were working for somebody and now they made you redundant. You lost your job because you have to go onto your new next chapter, right? Remember, every beginning is the end of something else. Every end is a new beginning of something else. So that's my biggest lesson. Enjoy every moment, no matter where you are, at the end or at the beginning or in the middle of your journey. Enjoy every single moment to the fullest, 100%, and give it 100% as well. Because without giving 100%, you will never be able to receive 100%. So enjoy every single moment.